Part 42. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 411. The figure slowly emerged from the darkness. He was a young man, about the same age as me, with a handsome appearance and elegant temperament. He came to me, bowed deeply to me, then raised his head and said respectfully to me, "Are you my disciple of Tai Nai?" "Too milky?" I was slightly startled. "Who are you?" The young man smiled at me. His smile was very clear and made people feel comfortable. "My name is Yu Xian, and I am a disciple of the Lu family." A disciple of the Lu family. I instantly became alert. "You must know that Tu Lu family Chang Xian died because of me." "Who is the grandma in your mouth?" Yu Xian said to me, "Chan San Tai's wife Lu Hangxuan." "Sure enough, it's Lu Hangxuan. However, does Lu Hangxuan have such a high status? Compared with Mrs. Chang San, the other two, Mrs. Hu Xian and Mrs. Hu Xian of the Hu family are more famous. Grandpa once told me that the third master had a high status in the Beijiaxian belief and was considered the elder of the Huxian family. He had the ability to predict misfortune and good fortune for others. Among them, the most famous of the Hu family is Mr. Hu. According to legend, Hu Sitei was the best general in the world, and the Jade Emperor would give him 7 points. He once worshipped Patriarch Li as his teacher, and his Taoism coexisted with heaven and earth, above the gods. As for Mrs. Chang San, I really don't know much about her. Su Tianxian listened to the conversation between the two of us and looked at me with some doubts. Then he stretched out his hand and gently covered my forehead. He closed his eyes and felt it carefully. After a while, Su Tianxian opened his eyes, looked at me deeply, then came to Yu Xian and asked, "What is your father's name?" Hearing the word father, a look of loneliness appeared on Yu Xian's face. He lowered his eyes and replied, "Yu Yun." Before Su Tianxian could speak, I quickly stepped forward and asked with some excitement, "Is your father Yu Yun?" Yu Xian nodded. "It's really hard to find anything without trying to find it, and it takes no effort at all." I took a deep breath, calmed down my excitement, and said to Yu Xian, "Do you have anything to do with Lu Hangxuan?" Yu Xian said, "The Lu family has encountered great changes, and we disciples who have stepped out have also been implicated. I originally used the help of the Taoist sect to calm down this great change, but the people of the Taoist sect did not help at all, and asked me to come here to help them snatch the magic weapon. Then when I left, the Chang Xian in me told me that he felt the breath of Chang San Tai Nai in you, and asked me to ask you for help." I listened and nodded. If I guessed correctly, the great changes that the Lu family encountered were caused by that dragon. "Okay, I can help you, but you want me to meet your father." Yu Xian opened his mouth, but he hesitated and couldn't say a word. "What's wrong?" My father is missing." My brows instantly furrowed. While Yu Xian and I were talking, Su Tianxian kept calculating with his hands, and finally said to me, "Go, I will go with you this time, just to solve your troubles." I nodded towards Su Tianxian. In this way, Yu Xian returned to Jiyuntang with us. On the way, Yu Xian told me some things about the 5 great immortals. The 5 immortals' families were originally in harmony with each other, but after the Lu family experienced great changes, all the conflicts broke out in an instant. If I go this time, I will face the hostility of the other 4 immortal families. It is very likely that your life will be in danger at that time. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 412. Yu Xian said it very seriously and had nothing to hide. After listening, my heart slowly sank. This trip is indeed dangerous, but I have a reason to go. I enshrined Lu Hangxuan's tablet in the room, and after placing a few incense sticks, I took out my mobile phone to book a train ticket to northeast China. Hua Xiu fell into a coma again after returning to Jiyuntang. As for Miao Fengluan, She also woke up under Su Tianxuan's treatment. I don't plan to take Miao Fengluan with me on this trip, because she has not yet recovered from her injuries. I can rest assured that Master Gui is by her side. I packed my luggage and went to the train station with Su Tianxian and Yu Yun. Yu Yun's hometown is a small village chief next to the Daxingan Mountains in the northeast. Daxinganling has been covered with heavy snow this season and the temperature is also very low, so I brought a lot of warm clothes. The train came roaring and we got on the train. Su Tianxian sat next to me, closing his eyes and concentrating, while I looked at the scenery outside the window. At this time, Su Tianxian suddenly said to me, "The foundation of Mount Tai's suppression of hundreds of ghosts is its soul. From ancient times to the present, countless evil ghosts have been suppressed on Mount Tai, and all of these evil ghosts are in your hands. With your current strength, you will not be able to exert the true strength of the soul of Taishan, and you will even be counterattacked and release thousands of ghosts. In fact, I have also taken these concerns of Su Tianxian into consideration. If all the ghosts imprisoned by the soul of Mount Tai were to be released, the consequences would be disastrous." "Master, I understand." At this time, a man passed by Su Tianxian. Su Tianxian suddenly opened his eyes and looked at that person. I also followed Su Tianxuan's gaze. The man wore a peaked cap and a black leather jacket. He was thin and looked very decadent. Although the man looked strange, I didn't feel the slightest yin energy in the man. After the man left, I asked, "Master, what's wrong?" Su Tianxian frowned, shook his head at me and said, "It's nothing. Tianfu City is a long way from Yuxian's hometown. If you take the train, it will take about a day and a night." Time soon came to night. Because I bought a sleeper berth, I went to bed early to rest. He fell asleep in a daze. I don't know how long it took, but in my sleep I felt like I had fallen into an ice cave. I woke up with a start and looked around. The train moved forward slowly, the entire carriage swaying, and the overhead bulbs emitted dim light. I asked Yuxian below me, "Yuxian, have you seen my master?" Yuxian raised his head, shook his head at me, and said, "No, I fell asleep at that time." I nodded, the chill just now made me sleepless. I came to the car window and sat down. I stared at the changing scenery outside in a daze. At this moment, the train is traveling in the wilderness. The moon hung high in the night sky, and the bright moonlight poured down, reflecting the shadows of the trees on both sides of the railway track on the earth. The train moves forward and the shadow recedes, dazzling those who watch. At this time, the train passed a small hill, and behind the hill was a forest. The moonlight penetrates the forest and shines directly on the train window. Suddenly a figure flashed before my eyes. I was slightly startled and quickly looked through the window towards the back of the train. I saw a man standing quietly beside the railway track. That man was thin and wearing a peaked cap. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 413. It's the man from the daytime. The train continued to move forward, and the man's figure gradually became farther and farther away, and finally disappeared at the rear of the car. At this moment, I suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder. I started up, turned around suddenly, and when I saw the person clearly, I let out a long sigh of relief. It's Yuxian. Seeing my nervous look, Yuxian asked with some confusion, "What's wrong with you?" I took a deep breath and motioned for Yuxian to sit down. I said seriously to Yuxian, "We seem to be being watched." Yuxian was stunned and asked, "Who is targeting you?" I told Yuxian what just happened. But just as I opened my mouth, I suddenly noticed a dark figure outside the car window out of the corner of my eye. I quickly turned my head and looked out the car window. This time, I saw the man again. The man was still standing quietly by the railroad tracks, his head lowered and motionless. Yu Xian followed my line of sight, and when he saw the man, his expression instantly turned extremely ugly. Just when the train was about to leave the man behind, the man slowly raised his head. Under the peaked cap was a pale, bloodless face. The corners of the man's mouth raised slightly, revealing an eerie smile. At the same time, blood began to flow from the corners of the man's eyes, nose, and ears. The scarlet blood looked particularly eye-catching in the night. The man opened his mouth, stuck out his tongue, and licked the corners of his scarlet mouth. My brain buzzed, and I looked at the man in shock. The man didn't look like a human being at this moment. And like a snake. Man left behind by train. I looked at Yu Xian, his face was livid, and his eyes were full of solemnity. Do you think he is a human or a ghost? Or another ghost? I asked Yu Xian. Yu Xian pondered for a moment and replied, I think he is a demon. Demon? What kind of demon? Snake demon. Yu Xian shook his head and said, it's not a snake demon. If he were a snake demon, my guy would have sensed it. Just then, the night light under the aisle seat began to flicker violently, as if it was shorting out. My expression instantly became extremely cautious. There are not many passengers on this train. There were only a few people in our carriage, including the three of us. The train entered a tunnel. The moment the train entered the tunnel, the night lights went out. The surroundings were plunged into endless darkness. Fortunately, the tunnel lights can still bring some light. The train is speeding through the tunnel, and the tunnel lights flicker on and off. In this environment, everything you see is like an old projector. The picture is bright and dark for a while. In this light, I suddenly noticed a person standing at the end of the carriage aisle. My expression instantly became extremely cautious. The lights flashed and the carriage fell into darkness. The next second, the light returned to the carriage. And the man standing at the end of the carriage aisle also disappeared. Suddenly, the surroundings fell into darkness again, and when the light returned again, the figure appeared again. This time it was in the middle of the aisle. Seeing this scene, I quickly stood up, walked to the aisle, held the 9 layers of Thunder Dew in my right hand, and stared at the figure closely. Darkness falls again. The figure disappeared again. The lights came back on, and a pale human face suddenly appeared in front of me. This human face was as pale as marble, with bleeding from all its orifices, and the scarlet blood formed a sharp contrast with the pale skin. It was like a drop of blood dripping on the snow. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, and he let out a weird smile that made people laugh. I raised the thunder weapon in my hand and blasted it towards that person. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 414. That person didn't even try to hide, and was directly hit by my thunderbolt. Every time the evil star returns to the palace, my strength will also improve. Now I have been able to superimpose the 9th level of thunder to the 3rd level. There is an essential difference between the triple thunder technique and the double thunder technique. It's not even remotely powerful. Thunder and lightning exploded, sending the man flying away. At the same time, Yu Xian also came to me. He stared at the person I blasted out with a vigilant expression. I saw the man paralyzed on the ground for a while, and then stood up in a movement that humans could not do, like a zombie. The man bared his teeth and claws and rushed towards me again. I picked up Leiju again, intending to kill it with one blow. However, something strange happened. My right foot that I originally stepped out seemed to be caught by something. I looked down and saw dark hands holding my ankles tightly. No. Shouldn't say hands. It should be said to be a shadow. What restricts my movement is actually a shadow. It was at this time that a strange feeling came over him. I felt severe pain in my left eye. I felt like something was leaving my body. The next moment, I saw my shadow squirming crazily and detaching directly from my heels. Seeing this scene, I was stunned for a moment. How is this going? Just when I was confused, my shadow struck at that man at an extremely fast speed. There was only a pop, and both of the man's feet were cut off. The man lacked the support of his feet and fell to the ground with a plop. The next moment, a dark arm pierced the man's chest. And this dark arm is my shadow. The man raised his head with difficulty, his bleeding eyes full of madness. I didn't expect that just after contact, you took back your abilities. As soon as these words came out, I instantly guessed the man's identity. The man is exactly that dragon. Of course, it is also the third evil star of the 9 evil stars, Mars. The man gave a sly smile, and he continued to say to me, "We will meet again, and you have to pay the price for what you have done." As soon as he finished speaking, the man's body began to slowly dissipate, turning into soot and disappearing into the air. When the man completely disappeared, a familiar pain emerged from the bottom of my heart and spread throughout my body. The evil spirit comes back. And the backlash this time was even stronger than the previous ones. I felt like all the bones in my body were being shattered, every cell in my body was trembling, and there were bursts of tingling pain in my skin, as if someone was peeling off my skin with a knife. I collapsed to the ground and began to twitch violently. The scene in front of me frightened Yu Xian. He quickly knelt down and asked with concern, "Lu Su, what's wrong with you?" I can't even say a complete sentence now. All he could do was howl in pain. Suddenly, a delicate and smooth jade hand grabbed my wrist. Immediately afterwards, I felt someone holding me in my arms. Just as I entered that person's arms, the pain in my body was slowly dissipating. "Don't be afraid." Su Tianxuan's voice came to my ears. I struggled to raise my eyes to look at her. I saw her looking at me with a gentle face. Her originally rosy and pretty face was turning pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. Moreover, her originally dark and lush hair actually had a little more silver strands. The scene in front of me reminded me of the last time Xiangyi lost dozens or even hundreds of years of Taoism by suppressing the evil spirit for me. It is hard to imagine how much pain Su Tianxian, who has been sharing the pain of the evil spirit with me, will suffer. When the pain disappeared, endless fatigue came over me, and finally I fell asleep deeply in Su Tianxuan's arms. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 415. When I woke up again it was the next morning. I sat up and rubbed my swollen head. Just at this time, Su Tianxian walked into the carriage, holding a plate of breakfast in her hand. "Come down and eat when you wake up," Su Tianxian said calmly. I nodded and got out of bed. Yu Xian was sitting on a chair in the aisle, looking at the scenery outside the window in a daze. I just wanted to tell Su Tianxian what happened last night. She said she already knew. I asked, "Master, is that ghost the evil star Mars?" Su Tianxian nodded and said, "That's right." After getting Su Tianxuan's affirmative answer, my heart slowly sank. Su Tianxian continued, "The reason why your shadow can act independently from your body is probably because of the evil star Mars. Your left eye has the same special ability as your right eye." I looked at Su Tianxian. Under the sunlight, her silver hair looked particularly eye-catching. I lowered my eyes, opened my mouth, and asked in a low voice, "Master, how about, let's remove the Beza blood evil?" Su Tianxuan's expression froze, his autumn eyes looked at me lightly, and said, "Why?" I raised my head, looked at Su Tianxuan's haggard expression, and replied, "I don't want you to bear this for me anymore, Master." Although I don't know what harm the evil spirit's backlash will bring to Su Tianxian. But just the few strands of white hair between her black hair are enough to make me feel guilty. Su Tianxian took a deep look at me, stood up and said, "You can rest assured that the evil spirit's backlash will not have much impact on me, and we are not allowed to mention this matter again." After saying that, Su Tianxian left. Although her tone was calm, I knew she was angry. I sighed slightly and could only find a chance to talk about it next time. We arrived in the northeast at noon. When I got off the train, the cold air that hit my face made me shiver. Although it is not winter now, the temperature in the northeast is still very low. Afterwards, we took the bus and transferred to Yuxian's hometown. Yuxian answered a phone call in the car. His expression became a little solemn, and he said to the phone, "Okay, I understand, I will be home soon." I saw this and asked, "What happened?" Yuxian hesitated and said, "A strange thing happened in our village." "Something strange?" Yuxian nodded and continued, "Someone is missing in the village, and the village chief suspects that it was caused by evil spirits." Yuxian pondered for a moment, his expression became a little solemn, and he lowered his voice and said, "I suspect that this matter is related to that ghost thing last night." I was slightly taken aback and asked, "Why do you say that?" Yuxian fell into silence, recalling what happened last night. His face became increasingly ugly. "Last night, my great immortal told me that that ghost is the dragon soul, and that all the great changes that the Lu family has encountered are related to him. It seems that Lu Hangxuan is right. If Xiaolong wants to regain his body, he will go to the Lu family to cause trouble." The bus moved forward slowly, and in the evening we arrived at a remote mountain village. Because transportation is inconvenient, we chose to walk into the village. The sky is dark, the autumn wind is bleak, and the crops in the fields have been harvested, leaving behind scorched yellow stalks. Walking on a country road, I suddenly noticed a person standing under a dead tree not far away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 416. The man was wearing a coarse short coat, with unkempt hair and stubble on his face, looking like a typical tramp. Since we showed up, he has been staring at us with a straight look in his eyes, which is very uncomfortable. I lowered my voice and asked Yuxian, "Who is that person? Why is he always staring at us?" Yuxian glanced at the man and said calmly, "Ah, him. He is a fool in our village. He always likes to stare at people and giggle." I nodded slightly and continued to look at the fool. I always feel like this fool is a bit strange. However, I didn't think too much and followed Yuxian into the village. The village is called Liuquan village, a typical northern primitive village. Yuxian led Su Tianxian and me back to his home. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Yuxian's mother busy in the yard. When she saw someone coming, she quickly greeted her warmly. Before our buttocks were warm, an old man hurried in. "Yuxian! Yuxian! Go and see. My granddaughter is pregnant." The old man came to Yuxian in a panic, holding his cane. Yuxian motioned to the old man to calm down and tell him what happened. The old man shivered and took out his cigarette, took a puff, and said, "Yuxian, you know my granddaughter's character. She is only 14 years old this year. She got pregnant. And she got pregnant overnight. Being pregnant at the age of 14 is quite strange." The second half of the old man's sentence was even more strange. "I became pregnant overnight, and I couldn't think of anything other than evil spirits." Yuxian frowned and asked, "Uncle Li, have you gone to see Mr. Ma? What did he say?" Uncle Li sighed and said, "Master Ma, he went somewhere to fool around again. He can't be found at all. I'm really worried to death." Yuxian stood up and said, "Uncle Li, let's go to your house first." Uncle Li quickly stood up and hurried out of the room with his cane. Su Tianxian and I quickly followed. When I saw Uncle Li's daughter, my pupils couldn't help but tremble. I saw a little girl with pigtails lying on the kong. She was wearing a plaid shirt and a pair of gray trousers. Her belly was swollen like a big watermelon. His red face was full of pain. Yu Xian stretched out his hand and gently covered the little girl's belly. He closed his eyes lightly and frowned more and more. After a while, Yu Xian put down his hand, looked at the little girl, and said to Uncle Li in a serious tone, "Uncle, your granddaughter is probably pregnant with something she shouldn't be pregnant with. You must find a way to beat that thing in her belly loose." Hearing these words, Uncle Li's old wrinkled face was full of anxiety. He screamed and quickly grabbed Yu Xian's arm and said, "Yu Xian, I am the only granddaughter. You can please help me." Yu Xian patted Uncle Li's old wrist and comforted him, "Uncle, don't worry, I will find a way to save Xiaoqui." Uncle Li looked excited and was about to kneel down to Yu Xian as soon as he bent his legs. Yu Xian quickly helped him up, "Uncle, you are just ruining my life." We left Uncle Li's house, and I asked Yu Xian, "Is it possible that the girl named Xiaoqui is carrying a ghost fetus?" Yu Xian shook his head, let out a long sigh, and replied, "I don't know, anyway, it's not a ghost fetus. It seems to be a snake fetus, but it doesn't seem to be the case." Yu Xian seemed very confused. Su Tianxian suddenly said from the side, "She is pregnant with a dragon." Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 417. I'm pregnant with a dragon. I looked at Su Tianxian in disbelief. Su Tianxian lowered his eyes, pondered for a moment, then raised his head and said to me, "If I'm not wrong, it wants to use this to be reborn." The dragon's body was destroyed, and now only its soul remains. "Then master, how should we stop him?" Su Tianxian pondered for a moment and said, "If he wants to be reborn, he must borrow the power of Changxian, so let's start from this aspect." I nodded. "Return to Yu Xian's house and discuss with him how to resolve this matter." Yu Xian thought for a while and replied, "At the moment, I can only invite my great immortal to come out and ask for his opinion." I nodded. At night, Su Tianxian and I came to Yu Xian's room. There was a memorial tablet enshrined in Yu Xian's room. He took out 3 sticks of incense and put them in the incense bowl, then lit them. In an instant, green smoke curled up. Yu Xian turned around and said to me, "When the great immortal comes to me later, you can ask him anything you want. Although I can't speak, I can still know everything that happened." I nodded, and then Yu Xian knelt in front of the rankings and kowtowed 3 times. Yu Xian muttered something, and after a moment, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. A powerful yin energy burst out from Yu Xian's body. Yu Xian stood up slowly. At this moment, his whole temperament had undergone earth-shaking changes. He was no longer as gentle and jade-like as before. His piercing eyes swept over me, and a chill spread from the bottom of my heart. Just when Yu Xian was about to say something, he saw Su Tianxian behind me. His expression froze, and then the sharpness between his brows disappeared completely. He took a step forward, raised his hand and bowed to Su Tianxian, and said respectfully, "Changxian Luan has met Master Tianxian." Su Tianxian glanced at him lightly, then nodded slightly. Changxian Luan raised his head, and then put his eyes on me. He looked at me for a long time and asked, "I wonder if you can invite Tai Nai out so that I can meet her." I shook my head at Luan and replied, "She fell into a coma and cannot show up for the time being. I am here to help your Chang family solve the trouble. Therefore, you can tell everything that happened to your Chang family." Luan was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, "I believe Tai Nai has told you everything. After the dragon is reborn, he will definitely take action against my Chang family to regain his strength. Furthermore, a traitor has appeared among our Chang family disciples, working for the dragon, so we must kill that dragon in its belly." "Is there a traitor among the disciples of the Chang family?" My first thought was about those 2 immortals who were colluding with the Taoist sect. I asked, "What do I need to do?" Luan thought for a moment and said, only the demon-catching masters of the Ma family can do this. Demon Hunter Ma's family. Seeing my doubts, Su Tianqian explained to me on the side, the Ma family, the demon masters, are very respected in the north for their ability to kill demons. If anything happens between the 5 immortal families, the Ma family needs to mediate. It dawned on me. It seems that the only thing left to do now is to look for the demon hunter Ma's family. At this moment, Luan's expression became extremely vigilant. He looked out the window and said in a serious tone, "Oh no. Sky Coffin." Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 418. What's wrong? I asked. Luan's surprised expression returned to normal instantly, and his eyes were filled with calmness. That little girl sucks the souls of living people to speed up the birth of the dragon. Hearing these words, Su Tianqian and I looked at each other, and without any hesitation, I rushed out the door. Luan and Su Tianqian followed closely behind. In the countryside at night, the strange hooked moon in the sky has already hidden itself in the clouds unconsciously, as if it is afraid of something. The moment I went out, the pale moonlight turned into endless darkness. Where is she? Luan closed his eyes and felt it carefully, then stretched out his finger in a direction, over there. I rushed towards the direction Luan pointed. When I passed a corner, there was a huge locust tree in front of me. There seemed to be a person squatting under the locust tree. The man's shoulders were slightly hunched, as if he was eating something. Just as I was about to step forward to see what was going on, I was stopped by Luan. He said, "Wait a minute, something's not right here." Luan took a step forward and shouted into the darkness, "Stop hiding, come out." The surroundings were deathly silent, but in the next second, an eerie laughter suddenly sounded in the darkness. "Luan, you know I'm here, how dare you come?" A figure stepped out of the darkness. Looking at the outline of this figure, I always feel like I have seen it somewhere before. When the man approached, I froze on the spot. It's the fool from the daytime. When Luan saw the fool, he felt as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He said in a serious tone, "Second Master Lu, it is indeed you." Lu Iryi looked stunned and scolded sternly, "You know it's me, why are you still standing here? Get out of here." Luan's expression was stagnant and he didn't speak. Lu Iryi put his eyes on me and said coldly, "Boy, there are some things that you can't interfere with. I'll give you a piece of advice. If you continue to stay here, I will let you." Before Lu Iryi finished speaking, Su Tianqian stepped forward and said coldly, "What will happen?" When Mr. Lu saw Su Tianqian, he squeezed out a few words through his teeth. "Su Tianqian." Su Tianqian approached Lu Iryi step by step, and said as he walked, "You just said, if we don't leave here, what will happen to you?" Lu Iryi subconsciously took a step back. "Su Tianqian, this is a matter for our Chang family and has nothing to do with you, an outsider." Su Tianqian said nothing and pressed forward step by step. Seeing that there was no way to escape, Mr. Lu shouted loudly, "Su Tianqian! Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful yin qi spread from Mr. Liu's body. Lu Iryi's figure flashed and disappeared instantly. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Su Tianqian. He raised his black and blue palm and patted Su Tianqian. Seeing this, Su Tianqian picked up the 9 layers Thunder Ju and started fighting with Mr. Lu. With a bang, thunder and lightning exploded, forcing Mr. Lu to retreat repeatedly. This brief confrontation caused Mr. Liu's expression to change slightly, and his original solemn expression instantly relaxed. "Ha ha ha! Su Tianqian! What on earth have you experienced? Your Taoism has deteriorated so quickly." Su Tianqian looked at Mr. Lu coldly and said, "That's enough for you." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Tianqian pressed the thunder-inducing Ju, and dazzling lightning fell from the sky and struck Lu Iryi directly. The white light dissipated, and someone appeared in front of Mr. Lu. I took a closer look, and it turned out to be the Xiaokui from the daytime. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 419. Xiaokui seemed to be a different person at this moment. Her belly was very high, her expression was indifferent, and her eyes were cold. What I didn't expect was that Su Tianxuan's thunder technique didn't cause any harm to her. Is it really the same as what Mr. Lu Er said? Has Su Tianxuan's moral character regressed? Xiaokui looked at Su Tianxian coldly and said, anyone who hinders my rebirth will die. Su Tianxian didn't react much after hearing this, and his eyes were full of indifference. The powerful demonic energy around Xiaokui made me breathless. Su Tianxian calmly stretched out her slender white hands, closed her eyes lightly, and muttered something. When I saw the spell in Su Tianxuan's hand, I was stunned. What kind of seal is this? Why have I never seen it? Luan on the side, his pupils trembling violently, exclaimed, Golden Light Spell. Grandpa once told me that the Golden Light Mantra is one of the 8 divine mantras of Taoism. It mainly focuses on cultivating the mind of the Taoist body. It advocates using the inner spirit of golden light to protect the body and subjugate demons to protect the Tao. The Golden Light Mantra has many uses, so many ordinary people can also recite it. But the only one who can reach the level of Su Tianxian is the contemporary Long Hushan celestial master. Golden light burst out from Su Tianxuan's body, and then the golden light lingered around her, like a sun. Su Tianxian slowly opened her eyes, and an extremely powerful aura exploded from her body. Xiaokui and Lu Eryi were directly knocked back. Before Xiaokui and Lu Eryi could react, there was a flash of golden light and Su Tianxian had already arrived behind Xiaokui. Su Tianxuan's cold eyes swept across the bodies of Lu Eryi and Xiaokui, her red lips opened slightly, and she said coldly, since I can't eliminate you, then I will let you shed a layer of skin. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Tianxian hit Xiaokui with the palm. I can feel the power of Su Tianxuan's palm from a distance. The corners of Xiaokui's mouth raised slightly, revealing a sneer. Then, she stretched out her hand and pulled Mr. Lu directly in front of her. Boom! Su Tianxian hit Mr. Lu firmly on the chest with the palm. Lu Eryi's face instantly turned as pale as marble, his throat squirmed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. Xiaokui grabbed Mr. Lu and threw him aside casually, then watched Su Tianxian retreat step by step. Little girl, I still underestimate you. Lu Eryi struggled to stand up and staggered to Xiaokui. Lu Eryi, who was used by Xiaokui to block the gun, did not show any dissatisfaction. Xiaokui continued, little girl, in a few days, I will come to this world again. By then, you and this kid will both die. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaokui rolled his eyes and fainted to the ground. Upon seeing this, Mr. Lu also disappeared in the darkness. Su Tianxian did not chase her. Instead, she knelt down, stretched out her green-white fingers, and gently touched Xiaokui's forehead. A beam of golden light spread from Su Tianxuan's fingertips to Xiaokui's forehead. After a while, Xiaokui slowly opened her eyes and asked in confusion, what's wrong with me? Su Tianxian glanced at her and replied, it's okay. After that, we sent Xiaokui back to Uncle Li's house. Luan left and Yuxian returned to normal. After that, the 3 of us discussed it and set off tomorrow to find Mr. Ma from the Ma family, the demon hunter. Now he is the only one who can defeat the dragon. Early the next morning, Yuxian took us into the barren mountains and wild ridges. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 420. Yuxian said to me, Master Ma lives in the Ma family courtyard. The Ma family courtyard is in a remote place. If we leave now, we can arrive there in the evening. I nodded. On the way, I kept peeking at Su Tianxian. Su Tianxian noticed my gaze, stopped, turned around and asked with some confusion, "What are you looking at?" I asked, "Master, are you okay?" Su Tianxian was stunned for a moment, then said immediately, "You don't have to worry about me, just concentrate on handling your affairs." Although Su Tianxian said this, I still felt a little uneasy in my heart. Su Tianxian looked at me and opened her mouth, with a very troubled expression. Finally, she let out a long sigh and said, "Lu Su, I will teach you the golden light curse. I didn't teach it to you before because you were not strong enough to activate it. You can master such a powerful spell now." I was stunned at first, then overjoyed. While we were on our way, Su Tianxian taught me the golden light spell. In addition to the golden light spell, Su Tianxian also taught me other Taoist techniques. Soon, the sun set and it was evening. The mountains and forests in the northeast are very cold at night, and I even saw snow on the shady side of the mountains. Yu Xian said to me, "Let's walk for another hour and we will be able to reach the Ma family compound." I nodded and continued on my way. The moon climbed quietly into the night sky, and the entire mountain forest was dead silent. Except for the footsteps of a few of us, no other sounds could be heard. As we walked, the atmosphere around us became a little weird. Not far away, there were dots of firelight among the trees. I was slightly startled, pointed in the direction of the flickering fire, and asked, "Is that the Ma family courtyard?" Yu Xian stopped and his expression became a little strange. He shook his head and replied, "No, there is still some distance. Since it's not the Ma family courtyard, what could those fires be? Random guessing will not lead to any results. You can only get the answer by looking at it yourself." We continued walking, passing by a forest, and an old mansion came into view. The house not far away was brightly lit, full of people, and the figures were twinkling. It was very lively, as if a huge banquet was being held. When Yu Xian saw this house, his face turned a little ugly. "Oops, we've encountered the Xian family's mansion." "The fairy mansion?" As soon as Yu Xian finished speaking, an old voice sounded behind us. "Are you guys here to participate in the Hu family's wedding ceremony?" I turned around suddenly and saw an old lady with white hair, an old face and slender eyes standing behind me. When did she appear? Forget it if I didn't notice it, not even Su Tianxian noticed it. I subconsciously replied, "No. It's not." Before I finished speaking, Yu Xian covered my mouth. He smiled at the old lady and said, "Yes, we are here to participate in the marriage ceremony." The old lady's mouth raised slightly, her slender eyes narrowed into a slit, and she said with a smile, "I wonder which family you represent." Yu Xian replied, "Chang family." The smile on the old lady's face became thicker and she said, "The Chang family. Let's go together." After saying that, the old lady walked past us with her hands behind her back. We followed closely behind. I looked at Yu Xian and asked in a low voice, "Why should we go?" Yu Xian's expression was a little serious. The Hu family is the head of the 5 great immortal families. His family's wedding ceremony will definitely attract spirits from several miles around to participate. Ordinary people will only die if they encounter such a situation. In order not to cause unnecessary trouble, we can only participate.